Hello everyone, my name is Shubhajit and you are watching Web Dev Shubhajit. So today we will be discussing about closures in JavaScript. Closures is also a very important concept related to interview perspective. So let's get started. So what are closures? Let's understand that first. Here you can see that we have a function named create hustler. Okay, this is the function create hustler. And inside that we have a variable greet hi, which is just containing a value hi. Then we have a function which is greet, and we are returning this function greet whoever calls this create hustler with the name. Okay, so this is the create hustler function. And now after that, what we are doing, we are actually having a greet fn variable which will be calling this create hustler function, and whatever is returned it will be present inside greet fn. Now many of you might be able to understand that inside this greet fn we will have this function greet. Why? Because whenever someone calls this create hustler, this greet function will be returned, and this greet function will be stored inside this greet fn, which is actually this function only. Now, one thing you should be able to understand that this greet function is actually using this greet hi, which is present outside this greet function. It is also using this name, which is also outside this greet function. Okay, so and we have the privilege that whatever we get in greet fn, for now it's a function, so we can call this function anytime we want, right? So the beauty of JavaScript is that it will actually let us to also pass the values which are present around the lexical environment of the actual function which is returned. Okay, what do you mean by lexical environment? Lexical environment means that the environment which is present around this function. So around this function and inside this create hustler, what is the lexical environment we have? This greet hi as well as the name. Okay, so this is the lexical environment here. So whenever we are returning this greet function, this greet function, it will also let us to use this greet hi as well as this name. I hope you are able to understand this. So in this case, what will happen is whenever this greet function create hustler is called, this greet function will get this function. Along with that, it will also get these values, these specific values. Okay, so now we are calling the greet function just after that line, but we can actually have some multiple lines. Let's say processing hustler. Okay, and after that we can have the greet function. Okay, I want to show you the output by running it. Can you see processing hustler, which is just a console log, and then hi Ankit, welcome to hustlers group. Ankit, because this name has been passed and this name is used. Greeting hi is using this hi variable. So I hope you are able to understand that what is happening here, that along with the function, it is also able to use the variables which are present outside the function somewhere else. So this is actually the concept of closures, where we are also able to use the lexical environment variables which are present outside the function which is returned. Okay. I also want to show you one more thing. Let's say we have this Ankit. After this Ankit, let's say we have Anupama. Okay. And we also greet function, let's say specifically for Ankit, and here let's say Anupama. Okay. Now I will call the greet function for Ankit, and I will call the greet function for Anupama. Okay. So now I am calling them one by one with a different value. So greet function Ankit will be a function, this greet function only, but here the name will be Ankit. Greet function Anupama will be the same greet function, but here the name will be Anupama. Okay, so you can see that two different instances of this greet function will be created based on you are calling it with different names. Okay, and whenever we are console logging it, I hope you are able to understand what should be the output. Let us see that. Hi Ankit, welcome to Hustlers Group. Hi Anupama, welcome to Hustlers Group. Okay, so you can create as many instances as you want, and that is how it works. Okay, so this is the first example for the closures. Now let us have some more real life use cases. Okay, so this example is a basic increment counter. So here you can see that, okay, I also need to uncomment this. Yeah, so we have a counter function. We have the same structure as this one only. Okay, so it will be easy for you to understand. We have this counter function. We have this count as a 0, which is present outside this function. Okay, and inside this function we have this count plus plus, and then we are console logging the count presently with the present value of the count. Okay, that's great. Now what we are doing here, we are actually creating an instance counter1 for the counter function, and this counter function will return us something. What is that something? That counter function is actually returning us a function, and this function uses this count. So with the above understanding, you should be able to understand that this count we will be able to use inside this due to the help of closures. Okay, and now whenever we are calling this counter1, which is a function, which is this function only, every time it will be making this count plus plus, but this count will be taken from here. So every time it will be incrementing one by one and getting updated. So initially when it is called counter1, it will make count plus plus. That is, initially it was 0, it will become 1, and then it will be console logging it. So count presently 1. After that again, we will be calling the counter1. Then it will be making the count to 2. Then it will be making the count to 3, and so on. Let me show you by running the example. Others are commented. Yeah. Okay. Can you see that count presently 1, 2, and 3? Okay. I hope you are able to understand this. And now let's go to a place where we are actually using this thing on the UI. Okay. Closures. And also I have an index.html page, so that whatever interaction we are doing here, we can able to see on the UI also. So that will be more like understanding for you. Let me explain you what it is. This is actually related to the previous, this function only. So we have a counter function, and inside that we have an ID. This ID is actually the ID. So here the IDs are button count 1 and button count 2. So these IDs are actually the IDs for the paragraphs which we will be populating later in the index.html, which I will be showing you on the UI in a short amount of time. Just bear some time with me and let's understand the JS file first. So here we are returning a function. Again, it's incrementing the count to count plus plus, and here, in spite of doing the console log as we have done above, we are actually, what we are doing, we are getting the element by ID from the document, and these IDs button count 1 and button count 2, and after getting them from the after getting by the ID, we are actually changing the inner text to the count. So here what will happen is this paragraph element will get populated. If it is of button count 1 ID, then it will get populated based on how many times we are clicking this counter 1 button. And this paragraph 2, which has the ID of button count 2, it will be populated based on the number of times we are hitting this counter 2. Because, why I'm saying that, because this counter 2 is associated, the on click of the counter 2 is actually associated with this counter 2 method. Okay, so where is this counter 2 method defined? This counter 2 method is defined here. Okay, so whenever we are calling this counter 2 method, what is happening? Can you see? So we have this counter 2 as counter function of button count 2. So whenever counter 2 is called, actually this function will be running, and what it will be doing, it will be making the count to count plus plus, and it will be getting the document with the uh, ID, the paragraph element with the help of the ID, which is the button count 2, and it will be changing the inner text to count. And if the counter 1 is clicked, it will be having the ID of button count 1, and similarly the count for the first counter will be incrementing, and they both will be different because both have different instances which are created with the help of different IDs. One is with button count 1 and one is with button count 2. Okay, I hope you are able to understand that. Now let me show you the UI, and let's see what happens. So ideally when we click the counter 1, there should be something popping up down which will be saying how many times we have actually clicked the counter 1. So can you see that this is updated, and there is no effect on this counter 2 because it is, they both are independent. Can you see, based on the number of times I'm pressing counter 2 and counter 1, they are actually updating in different ways based on whatever we are clicking. So this is the use case of closure. Okay, so the main thing you have to understand about closures is that whenever inside a function we are returning another function as a variable, and we have the privilege that we can actually call this function anytime later, but we can actually use the variables which are present in the lexical environment, that is the surrounding environment for the function which we have written. These variables can be utilized inside this function which is returned. That is the basis of closure. I hope you are able to understand this, and this video might be helpful for you. So do comment out any doubts which you have, and please share it with other people so that other people can also learn from this. Thanks a lot.